This is My Taste is Better Than Yours, the manga podcast where Guardian Enzo and I, Samu, discuss some of our favourite series and figure out, is my taste better than yours? Hello again, everybody. It's Samu here, and I'm joined as always by my wonderful co host, Guardian Enzo.
Oh,
Oh, and we're going to be talking about what's usually my favourite subject to be discussing, which is Weekly Shounen Jump. We got this little new section we're going to cover, which Enzo came up with the lovely name for it, Jumping to Conclusions, where we're going to be. Our plan is we've got this new round of Weekly Shounen Jump serializations, get our initial first impressions, how we think they're going to go based on that. As it says, we're going to jump to conclusions. So, yeah, Enzo, thank you for suggesting this idea. I think what's the best way to start with this is for anyone who's not familiar, Weekly Shonen Jump has quite an out spinning door policy where any series that does begin serialization, they have to essentially replace it with something that's already in the magazine so that they can maintain the 19 to 21 ish series always running at any given time. This time we have two new series that have joined the roster, Embers and Star of Beethoven, but different than usual. They have technically 3/4 series that ended or went on pause last time. So, yeah, why don't we take this option to say goodbye to the series that ended, and if we have any thoughts on them, we can just touch on them. So, Mission Yozakura Family, that and Undead Unluck, they both started around the same time, around similar lengths, and I would say generally similar degrees of success, which is
mm,
firmly mid. Um,
mm.
and I think, for my opinion, Enzo, I know you haven't been reading these weekly, or I think your experience of them was just initial impressions of the anime before you dropped them. Is that right?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been reading them. They've never been my favorites in the magazine. But one thing I would note is that I always genuinely did prefer Undead Unluck to Mission Yozakura Family. And I found actually with the final arc, with even the final stretch of like what would be the last volume, that Mission Yozakura Family kind of won me over more. And I think it did have a more successful, cohesive, complete ending that any fan of the series, I think, would be super happy with. Whereas Undead Unluck did suffer from some rushing to get to the final sprint. And yeah, I think I felt that. I definitely felt that. And personally, I feel like Undead Unluck went too long in its second half. So it was never my favorite. Neither of them were. If anything, I was quite looking forward to seeing them leave the magazine so I could get some fresh meat.
Yep.
So those were the two that I knew were definitely going to end, and they did. And then Hakutaku. This is oh, poor Hakutaku. Such a classic case of such a brutal cancellation. Yeah, I think it was 18 or 19 chapters in the end. Probably going to be 2 volumes when compiled. Uh, Enzo, tell me what you think of Hakutaku in the end.
Well, I first of all, between Yozakura Family and Undead Unluck, mid is exactly the word that kept playing in my head when thinking about those two series. Mid quality, mid success. Both certainly successful serializations, but not like big timers. It you're right, and my experience with them was with the anime. If I had stuck with either one of them, if you kind of had the gun to the head situation, it would have been Undead Unluck. It seemed the more interesting of the two after the early portion of the story. But I didn't find either of one of them had anything particularly compelling going on, so I don't miss them. Like you, I don't read the magazine encyclopedically cover to cover, but when there are series in there that I don't read, it's nice in a sense to have them go away and maybe something will come in that I will like. So Hakutaku I did like. I knew almost immediately that it was going to fail. I could see in even before the initial numbers started to come in, which were grim. You could just tell that it didn't check a lot of boxes for a series that was going to be successful, especially in Jump. But I did like it. I thought that the characters were kind of engaging, and I thought the artwork was sort of, fun and quirky in a slightly old school way. And hey kids, let's make a game. There are a lot worse premises for for a manga than that. So I enjoyed it for the 3 or 4 months that it ran. But I didn't enjoy it to the level that I was really devastated that it went away, like I was with Green Green Greens and Psych House. So, but if it was still running, I would still be reading it for sure.
Yeah, I think the problem with Hakutaku was, it, for me at least, first chapter was pretty good, and I was kind of sold on the premise. And I think it kind of meandered around for quite a while after that point, and didn't really, for me, it didn't really sell to the audience what it was trying to put across. In some ways, it did feel quite amateurish because it is this author's first series. And it did, if anything, the worst thing a doomed cancelled series could do is it for me got better in the final stretch, and those final, I would say, 3 or 4 chapters, like I could see, oh, so this is what the series would have been if it had that chance. The ending that it went for was kind of like a tease for the plan that could have happened, and yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate, but it was never destined to survive, I think.
Yep, it was doomed from the womb.
Indeed, indeed. There is one more that did end, quote unquote, and that was the 10 chapter batch of Hunter x Hunter, which
I've heard of that.
Yes, did you like Hunter x Hunter? Is it better than Hakutaku?
I did like Hunter x Hunter. Yes, it's very good.
So we got our classic 10 chapter batch. Togashi, we actually haven't heard from in a while. The latest we did hear before the end of 2024 was that he was focusing on, I believe, storyboarding and writing way further ahead. So I'm going to assume he's still in that mode, and he's also sitting on a big stack of chapters. He's already essentially nearly done another batch of 10 chapters that he can publish. So fingers crossed we get them this year if we do hear an update from him.
He also had surgery too. That was another thing we should point out. We don't know what the surgery was, but through his Twitter account, we do know that he had some sort of surgery. Judging from the way he worded his tweets, I would guess
casual.
I would have said it was probably like some kind of outpatient surgery or local anesthetic kind of surgery, something fairly minor, which implies, given how serious his back issues are, probably not back related, because his back is so bad that he's past the stage of those arthroscopic and microdiscectomy and all those. It might have been something completely unrelated, but in any event, we know that he's got much more in various stages of gestation than he has seemingly had during his previous hiatuses when they began. My guess is I think Jump would like to maybe take the 10 chapter a year thing and see if maybe he could do 20 a year. I think that might be their goal. Whether he's able to achieve it or not, I don't know. I will tell you this, though, based on everything he's put out there in his Twitter about the stuff he was working on, I'm not expecting a 3-year hiatus this time. I mean, I expect more chapters in 2025. No. And this is the first year that started on hiatus where I would have said, honestly, I'm expecting new chapters this year. I am expecting new chapters this year. I think they'll happen.
Yeah. I don't know if we've actually discussed it on the podcast before. Maybe you know this already, but Togashi's situation with Hunter x Hunter and Weekly Shounen Jump is pretty unique compared to other authors in the magazine as well, which I think lends to his freedom, and it's the reason why he can so openly give these updates and posts about what he's doing and showing off his storyboards, which is probably something which is not in the contract for every other Weekly Shounen Jump mangaka. He essentially has the rights to Hunter x Hunter, so this agreement of him doing 10 chapters and potentially 20, yeah, I'm sure Weekly Shounen Jump, my take is that they would take as many as he'll give them, and he comes to them and says, okay, there's going to be 10, and they'll be like, fine, you've got 10 chapters, we'll start publishing them in 7 weeks, and then they go from there. So I think it's good that he has at least the control on that situation. Right, let's start then with the 2 new series. Even though we got 4 that just left the magazine, we only got 2. First of them is called Embers, and the mangaka duo that we have here, we have the story by Kei Kurumazaki and the art by Soutarou Nishii. Now, Kei, the the story writer, I don't believe we don't know too much about them. However, the artist we learned was an assistant for Blue Lock, which I think kind of built up some expectation, some little bit of hype online going into it, especially since the artwork kind of did, I feel like, give off that energy, that vibe. You could definitely see the influence, I feel. But before we go into that, I'll give a little brief synopsis. It's about a middle schooler, a delinquent brawler called Noboru Haitani. He's presented as this delinquent because he's never lost a fight, but potentially there's more to him. Potentially he's not actually as bad of a guy as he's made out to be. And in his final year of middle school, he essentially is brought in by his teacher to, instead of fighting with his fists, to like arguing with other people, he has to beat him in a soccer or football match,
Yeah.
as I'll call it, and it provides a new opportunity for Haitani to, I don't know, let's say like put out his feelings and vent out his frustrations, and he finds something that he's not good at, but in that we see him potentially growing from there and using that in a way to build him to be a better person. Now, this first chapter does start in middle school. I'm going to use this comparison a couple times. So I feel it's very haiku. Player of a game who is not super familiar with it in terms of skill and practicality, but has some passion. And they're kind of thrown into this game, and where they face off against a prodigy of a different middle school, and that character that we see is Takumi. And yeah, the first chapter is basically about this confrontation that the two have. We're for the series, we're kind of only going to focus really on the first chapter of each, but this one does also have a second chapter out at the time of us recording. And like I said, this gave Haikyuu vibe to me in terms of even the main character and the setup. But with what happens in the second chapter as well with Takumi, yeah, I'm feeling the comparison pretty strong between them and Hinata and Kageyama. So, what was your first impression of Embers, and what were you expecting going into it? I don't think you were maybe part of the hype train that some people were building up because of the artist.
No, I mean, I don't care for Blue Lock, so that meant nothing to me. Let me first of all say that one of the reasons that I kind of pushed this idea of doing this, the jump into conclusions, is I think any new Jump series, any new Jump serialization is kind of a big story, and I felt like it's something that, this is a good time to weigh in, and maybe people are deciding whether or not they want to give a series a shot. Maybe they're not aware that new series have started off. So I do think I think it's kind of an important topic for us to cover. As far as Embers specifically, um, I found it to be kind of generic across the board, really, both visually and in terms of story. I would not have drawn the Hinata connection if you hadn't mentioned it, but the whole end of junior high school, yeah, that's obviously the same way Haiku did it, although that's certainly not the only series sports manga to do that. I've read a lot of soccer manga, and football if you're not in the United States, Canada, or Japan. It's okay. There is one part of the first chapter which I kind of liked, and you alluded to it, which is when the teacher, who's an older teacher, maybe in his 40s or 50s, takes it on himself to kind of school this kid in that a sport is not just a display of brute force; it's actually skill, which is a good lesson for any kid to learn. And I liked him, and I thought that sequence was the best of the first two chapters. But the rest of it, none of the characters really sparked anything in me, and the situation seemed pretty boilerplate. I've kind of seen it all before, and seen it all before done better. That was pretty much my read.
I'm in a similar place. I feel like content wise, it wasn't out of the box in any way that made it stand out, really. I mean, the artwork
Yep.
was nice, but even I say Haikyuu, there is a bit of blue lock to it aesthetically. Yeah, it didn't live up to any hype for me, I'll be completely honest. And if anything, it just made me think, especially how the second chapter plays out as well. Okay, if we're just going to get this very much a haiku scenario between these main characters, maybe I should just reread haiku. Like, I don't know. Um, the teacher stuff was actually my favorite as well. I'll be a little bit disappointed if he does get sidelined. Not sure how he could work narratively since it's not the same like school system, like jumping from junior high to high school. I wonder if
Hmm.
he will play a part going forward. Um, the main character is a defender. I mean, I'm gonna say this as well. I am not this. This is not a sport of which I follow in real life, even though it is very much part of the culture of this country. But from what I understand, being a main character in a soccer/football series is not the most common position. So maybe there'll be a different route that it can take there in exploring his character. Who knows? I'm trying to like think positively of something that I didn't
Sure.
really love all that much. And one thing I probably will give it credit for is it has definitely the potential I can see similar to Haikyuu, and I would argue a lot of popular modern sports manga is I can see it appealing to both boys and girls, to a variety of demographics. I think I could imagine fan art of these characters if there is some sort of dynamic connection that becomes obvious quite soon. So I can see it
Yeah.
generating a fandom potentially.
It's possible. There are a couple of soccer series, football series that have defenders as main characters. Ginga E Kickoff is one. Actually, Aoashi too, although there's a twist there. But yes, so it's not totally unheard of. I would also say regarding the teacher, that puts me in mind of Ao no Orchestra, which obviously is not a sports series, but like many music related series, is kind of a sports anime structurally. And the best part of Out No Orchestra actually was the junior high school, the teacher in the junior high school arc in the beginning. And when they got out of, when the main character got out of junior high and went to high school, you think to yourself, that's a shame, because narratively speaking, it would be really hard to work that teacher into the story. And Outdoor Orchestra sort of does, which is nice. And I too would like it if Embers found a way to incorporate that element. But it not enough for me to keep reading it to see if it happens. I mean, I'll give it a couple more chapters, but it's kind of a throwaway.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask that question of both these series. If you are planning to read them, you've answered that already. You'll give it another shot. I will obviously keep reading because I read everything. It's a
Yep.
contractual obligation at this point that I've made in my brain. So I will be reading it. Other question I was going to ask though, I'll do this for both of them. We're going to jump to conclusions. Is this going to
Mm.
survive? What's the future? What's the future if I tell you now you have to predict it?
I don't think it will. Because sports series in Jump kind of really have to have something distinctive about them
Yeah.
to make them stand out. I saw this was about as indistinct as a opening two chapters can be. There was very little that stood out about it. So I would expect it'll go the 2025 chapter route. That would be my prediction, which famously I'm often wrong, but that would be my guess.
I am in the same spot as you, so we can both be wrong if it does prove otherwise. Like you say, I think sports series, specifically in Weekly Shonen Jump, in this modern era, have a tougher time. We haven't really had any series. Maybe you could say Blue Box. Blue Box is kind of a hybrid in of itself, but we haven't had any pure sports shonen Weekly Shonen Jump hits since Haikyuu ended. So I do think the magazine wants something. Whether that will be that thing, we shall find out. One thing that I think we can both agree on, which is good though, at least there's no superpowers yet. This isn't Kuroko no
No,
Basuke.
but it is a Blue Lock assistant though, so you never know.
We never know, never know. I will say as well, if I'm to praise the artwork or the character designs in one way, the rivals' eyebrows are fabulous. That design on those. Uh, if the series itself is not unique, particularly in any way, that eye design is actually quite unique. Last point. Let's give a little chapter rating. Usually we do like out of 100, but I know on your Lost in Anime you do like a letter tier like S, A, B, etc. So S to F. What's your score of this chapter?
Well, what I do is like the the first impressions when I do my season check-in, after 3 or 4 episodes, we have the elite, and then outstanding and very good, worthwhile, still watching. I would put this in the still watching category because I'm going to read 1 or 2 more chapters, but no higher than that.
Okay. Yeah, to me, this is very much the definition of a B tier, just standard chapter.
At best.
Now, let's go on to the next series, Star of Beethoven, it is called, and the mangaka is Morihiro Hayashi. Brief synopsis, it is about the main character, Ichiro Yasu, who is a promising pianist, but after some incident that we have yet to really understand about, he stopped playing piano entirely for the past 2 years, and he's kind of this like lazy underachiever from what we've seen in initial pages. Cut to the big twist, the big moment, and we have Beethoven. He has been reborn, transported in death to future modern day Japan. Well, future for him, modern day for us. And yeah, he still speaks German, but as it so happens, Ichiro Yasu also speaks German. This is a good thing. They can communicate to each other, and yeah, we see their interactions. This like him trying to wrestle with being 200 so years in the future. Famously, Beethoven did go deaf in his later years. He is able to hear once again. His health is restored, and as it so happens, and as is pretty expected, I think, as you're reading the chapter, prodigy and Ichiro Yasu, famed musician in Beethoven, there's going to be this teacher disciple dynamic and bringing Ichiro Yasu back into the world of piano playing. I'm going to kick this off by saying I did not like this chapter.
Okay.
While I wasn't in love with Embers, I was just pretty mid on it. This kind of pissed me off. Like, I'm not gonna lie. What I also do is I read the magazine in order of the table of contents as well, to get the experience that the editor in chief, that the behind the scenes want us to read them. So I do that, and I got halfway through this chapter, and usually I love to binge every Sunday when they come out, but I stopped for a couple of hours, and it took me till the evening to pick it back up. And once I did finish the chapter, I was like, okay, I got to start tomorrow because this pissed me off. Maybe I'm just a better PPPPP stan. Do we need another crazy, esoteric, weird pianist manga? Maybe we do. Maybe they felt that they want to like tap into that again. But all it did for me was remind me, God, I wish PPPPP was still running. Yeah, I have specific feelings about why I didn't like it, but Enzo, why don't you tell me how you felt? Probably a little bit more positive than I.
Yeah, that's a low bar. Well, I will say this: maybe the most relevant thing I can say is of the 2 series that we're talking about, I found this to be the more interesting of the 2. And I enjoyed this chapter more than I enjoyed Embers. I did also like PPPPP, by the way. PPPPP. Yes. I liked it. I didn't maybe like it as much as you, so maybe I don't have as much of a loyalty factor telling me I should hate this one. But it didn't really remind me too much of that series. It's kind of just random and goofy. And sloppy in a way, but I would take random and goofy and sloppy in a kind of somewhat endearing way over Embers just being generic and indistinct without anything really that stands out about it. I did, there were a couple times in this chapter that I kind of chuckled. And I just kind of thought to myself, well, that's interesting. Are they going to explain that? Or no? Well, maybe later. And thematically, okay, that this portrayal of Beethoven was certainly an interesting one. It was kind of a fist of the North Star Beethoven, if you like. So I could see that potentially being interesting. I don't know how knowledgeable or how deep the mangaka wants to go on the classical music side. I'll be interested in finding that out. But I kind of liked it just for its sheer kind of goofiness and randomness, and it's one of those series I could either see being unintentionally funny or even intentionally funny in a good way, and being worth following for that. So certainly did not love it, but compared to Embers, I was much more engaged by it. I guess that's how I would describe it.
I think for me, it's not super similar in content to PvP, but both of them do have they have a character to themselves. PvP as well, I felt like, and I think you'll probably agree, didn't really operate. Never mind like a Weekly Shonen Jump manga. I felt like it just didn't operate by many rules whatsoever. It just kind of
It didn't operate like a manga. It didn't
no,
have a narrative. It didn't have a narrative stream. It didn't have a 3 act structure within the chapters. It didn't I mean, I this is maybe my own personal foible, but I like at least half the characters in PPPPPP. I had no idea even if they were supposed to be male or female until it was pointed out in the text, often many chapters after their arrival. It was just, yeah, it was a completely bonkers kind of a series, which was what I liked about it. That and the artwork was really, really kind of strange and almost surrealistic. So this is not nearly as out there as that series. Let's at least so far, it's not, but
no.
it is weird, and I would take weird over boring given a choice.
Sure. Yeah, PvP felt to me at times like it was written by an alien who had come into humanity and was like trying to figure out a way to tell a narrative by our conventions.
Yeah, yeah,
I think my main problems with Star Beethoven, I had a couple. I think for a first chapter, I just think it was quite slow. Not much happened, and I can't see it being particularly gripping for your average reader picking it up. At least from my experience, I feel like there wasn't necessarily enough of a hook. We did see the scene where he played at the end, and the artwork in that moment was quite nice. But as well as that, I felt that the artwork was quite sloppy. Um, I just felt like there wasn't flow there in a way that felt super natural to me as I was reading page by page, which I think is maybe just down to being a rookie author. Even though it's just one chapter, the dynamic between Ichiro and Beethoven is random as all hell. The series, all the characters, all the things that happen within the chapter, it felt quite randomized. Things were just happening in a way that just
yes,
didn't
yes, I agree
like
with that.
that you see who I think she's going to be a more prominent character, another girl who's a pianist and potentially friend of Ichiro. And as soon as I saw her, I was like, "Oh, you look like you're from a very different series, and that you're going to appeal to male readers in a very different way." I just like everything that happened. I was like, "Okay," it's like the car is just switching direction every 5 pages. Um, yeah, I'm not against saying that it can win me over because, admittedly, PPP, it took me a bit of volume to like get it, and once I got it, I was in it. As time has gone by, I only love it more and more. It's probably one of my all-time favorite cancelled Weekly Shonen Jump series. So I'm not against saying that Star Beethoven can improve in my view, but I don't know if this first chapter will grip readers personally.
I don't think it will, honestly. I think Weird has an uphill battle at Weekly Shonen Jump to begin with. Classical music, if sports series have a struggle at that magazine, I think classical music series even more so. Um, this kind of Beethoven as this kind of JoJo Fist of the North Star character, I could see that having some appeal. But there is nothing in there that screams breakout hit to me. No, I would agree with that. It appeals to me. The reasons I kind of sort of like it are the reasons it's probably going to tank. But that
Yeah.
I always felt that was true about PPPPP too. That the reasons I liked it were the reasons that most people didn't. And I would agree with you. That series was one where you only really get that one when you sort of surrender, turn your brain off to all of its normal deductive functions and just float away on it and let it take you where it wants to take you. And once you reach that kind of fugue state with PPPPP and just let it carry you away in the current, it's a very unique experience. And I could see something similar happening here, but I don't think that's what it's going for in the first place, really. So, yeah, I'm not predicting a big hit for it, and I'm not saying the first chapter was particularly great, but I at least found it to be interesting. And there's that you could do worse than that.
You mentioned JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I actually would have preferred it if it was like a proper piano battle manga with all these people.
Well, it still could be.
The only thing is he's not a spirit in the way that something like Tenmaku Cinema recently, or a favorite of yours, Hikaru no Go.
Right.
If anything, this is like an isekai. He's just like been reborn in the future, and everyone else can see him and interact with him, which felt quite like a jarring decision to me. And that way, I'm curious to see just how he is going to fit in narratively. Is there going to be other instances of this happening with famous people?
I will say, though, that since you mentioned that, there was an anime, I can't remember the name of it now, which I may or may not have even been based on a manga. I don't even know. This was a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I want to say. But there was an anime that had a bunch of classical composers coming back to life in a Classicaloid. That's what it was called. Classicaloid. And it had a bunch of like Mozart and Beethoven and Liszt and Schubert, and they all ended up living in a modern day apartment building in Tokyo and kind of doing battle with each other. And it frankly wasn't very good, but if Bino Seisen were to go that route, you might have some issues with encroaching on the territory a little bit.
I've just looked that up as you're saying that, and that being Beethoven is the main character as well. Definitely similarities there.
Yep.
Okay. What's your rating of this chapter, Enzo?
I would go maybe give it a 1 grade up from Embers, like on my scale, like a W worthwhile. And I'll definitely follow it for a couple more chapters and see kind of what he has in mind with it. Could easily see dropping it at that point, but more of a chance I'll stick with it a little longer than I will with Embers, more likely.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to put this as like C tier, like C minus even. It's just not a gripping first chapter for me, I'm afraid. And we kind of touched on it. I feel like our answer is similar for this series. I also would not be surprised if this series doesn't make it beyond 2025. That is my prediction.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a short timer. It should not buy any green bananas.
Technically, we had 3/4 series ending / paused, and only 2 joining the magazine. We do have this new series of one-shots that they're putting out for the next 9 weeks, which is called the Jump Future Project 2025, running running for 9 weeks. And that essentially is taking what would be the 3rd spot for another series if it was going to be replacing, let's say, Hakutaku. So I'm going to be checking those out, definitely. I'm curious to see how those one-shots do and what their intention is with putting them out there. The Weekly Shounen Jump does do these groupings of one-shots occasionally. Every year they have the Golden Future Cup, where the winner gets a guaranteed serialization, even if historically the winners and the serializations that do come out from it are not really successful. I think this maybe is something they're going to... It seems like they're casting their net to try and find what's sticking out with readers, potentially. So yeah, that's worthwhile checking, because I believe it's looking likely that those will all be scanned and available to read online. This is our first of this series of jumping to conclusions, and the conclusions we met on both of them are pretty similar, I feel. So next time we do this, if we decide to continue and discuss another serialization round, maybe these 2 will already be on the door out. Let's see. We'll pick it up when then.
Yep. And hopefully the next round when it comes, will make a bigger first impression than these 2 did.
Fingers crossed. I would hope so, definitely. But yeah, thank you, Enzo, for suggesting this, and thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully, this if you're not super in tune with Weekly Shonen Jump, this gives you a little push to check out these series and form your own opinions.
Thanks.
Bye bye.